My name is Eva Dunagan. In 2 weeks, I will be 27 years old. The Disciples of Christ Missions Board has sent me here. I want to do what is right. In my pocket are a soiled handkerchief, the case for my tortoiseshell sunglasses, a tattered spiral notebook full of Lonkundo language phrases, and a letter that arrived yesterday from my mother. I am deep in the interior of the African continent, a stone's throw from the equator. I thought, growing up in Oklahoma City during the Great Depression, that I knew something about heat and despair. My mother raised me in a 2-room apartment as the Dust Bowl swept misery across the parched soil of the Panhandle. We scraped for pennies and nickels, improvising poverty-line comfort by sucking on chips of ice and cooling ourselves with funeral home paper fans. But never in those years did I experience anything like this. In the middle of the day, it's too hot here to think clearly. The air shimmers as it hangs over ragged grass. It is too humid for marital relations, not that there is enough privacy for that anyhow. At noon, my head hurts from the sunlight. It burns my blue eyes. Night brings a brief respite, the simmering jungle cooling as the shadows grow long. But with dawn, the temperature rises. It may not be any hotter in Congo than during the dog days of an Oklahoma summer, but back home, summer passes. Here, the heat and humidity are relentless, giving in only twice a year for a short, rainy season. Right now, I crave rain. My husband, Richard, and I have been in Africa for 8 weeks and are halfway through our missionary orientation. For 4 years we trained for this, and now there are days I wonder why. Whatever could my purpose be in this world which is so thoroughly not my own? I sit next to Richard in the back of a battered pickup truck, jostling along a rutted path through thick green foliage that threatens to grow across the narrow road and block our way. It is not far to our destination, and we are full of the Holy Spirit, though today's business promises to be ghoulish. We are being taken for a day trip to the local leper colony. It is part of our training. Martha Stebbins, the wiry, gray-haired nurse in charge of medical care on the Disciples of Christ mission where we are staying, gives us a ride. She runs a leper colony, delivers babies on the mission, and in between practices dentistry, powering her diamond-tipped drill with the treadle of an old Singer sewing machine. It is just 10:30, but the temperature already has risen to 37 degrees centigrade. I look at myself in the cracked side mirror of the pickup truck. I learn very quickly that it is futile to put on makeup in Congo. Now I just stay clean and am content not to have dust caked in the folds of my elbows and knees. My jaw tightens as we near the edge of the leper colony. There is a palpable feeling of death in the air, so thick I think I can smell it. Martha's truck lurches to a stop on the thick razor grass. She pulls the handbrake aggressively. It ratchets tight. At the end of the path is a makeshift clinic, distinguished from the other buildings by a corrugated iron roof, leopard-spotted with rust. Martha marches ahead of us, medical bag tucked sternly under her arm like a riding crop. Richard and I move closer to the buildings, walking between 2 of the mud huts toward the center of the village. We hear a yelp, and a little boy peers around the corner and comes running up to greet us, grinning and flailing his skinny arms. Without intending to, I turn away, unprepared for the sight. He has no nose, just 2 holes in his face surrounded by decaying flesh. "It's okay, Eva," Richard promises. His Tennessee tenor is sweet, but has the familiar hollowness I have heard in my own voice when saying something purely because I ought to. I brace myself. Of course it's okay. I am prepared for this. The little boy stops 10 feet in front of us. He cocks his head to one side and looks at me curiously. After a moment's hesitation, he offers me a gap-toothed smile and a gentle wave. The boy is missing 2 fingertips. I try to smile back, but something is wrong with my mouth. After what is surely a miserable grimace, I look down at the dirt. I must do better than this. "This is Mbende," Martha tells us, walking toward the boy. His father died 2 months ago, right at the time you arrived here in Congo, but he's recovering. Martha looks at the compound like a mother bird counting her chicks, squinting and shielding her eyes from the sun. "Come on, then," she says curtly. gesturing to the medical hut. It's part of your orientation. For the rest of the morning, we follow Martha on her rounds, dispensing antibiotic sulfa and compassion to all who will receive it. At first, I am afraid to touch the lepers, squeamish at the sight of their molding potato flesh, but Martha assures me it is safe. I cannot catch what they have. At one point, I stop for a moment and ask myself, is it leprosy of which I am most afraid, or of desperation? Richard and I are just beginning to learn the Lunkundo language, so our ability to communicate is limited. Today, however, we do not need words to understand the Africans. The lepers' deep-set stares tell their stories in the universal language of pain. Several times I have to stop and sit, collecting my wits before I can continue. I cannot imagine myself in these people's condition, lying around a fire at the center of the village in the thick tropical heat, slowly rotting. Maybe Jesus is exactly the hope they need. But hope for what? A salvation? They smile at me. How is it they can do that and I cannot return the simple gesture? I may have Jesus to sell them, but these natives already have something I do not even understand. We go back to the truck to eat our lunch, though I have little appetite. I spread a dish towel on the hood of the truck and fix sandwiches from a can of horse meat I packed this morning. Martha brought the ripe bananas and guava. I watch as she spits seeds on the ground. I put mine in a handkerchief and empty them into the brush after we have finished eating. As we trail Martha on her afternoon rounds, I take a long look at Richard's face. I don't understand how he can be so cool. I pull him aside. Why have you been so quiet? I asked. Richard squints and looks out across the compound. An old native woman, still graced with the attachment of all her body parts, watches suspiciously from the shade of a doorway. Well, I reckon I'm just doing what we're here for, he says at last, wiping the sweat and dust from his brow in a handkerchief. I can't rightly imagine what God has in mind, making his creatures so pitiable, I say. Why would you want to go on living? Richard surveys the camp, silent and still. Well, now then, Richard says slowly, pursing his lips, the Lord gives us great strength, each of us and each of them. He nods toward the lepers. It is our duty to persevere, not to surrender. If Martha got all weak-kneed like you, no offense, nothing would get done around here. There'd be no one to minister to these, to the sick and dying. I trail Martha as she counts the palm nut clusters, writing numbers on her typewritten form. How do you do it? I ask quietly. Martha looks at me without any trace of emotion. Why are you here? She asks me after a pause. I stammer an inconclusive response and feel my cheeks flush with embarrassment. A moment passes before Martha speaks again. I just do, she says at last. It's not like I ever imagined it would be. There is no preparation they can give you for this. She glances at me for a moment as a trace of a smile appears on her lips. Then she looks back at the lepers, their skin leathery from years and fierce sun, waiting for a miracle from the Christ the missionaries have promised them. Come on, she says. When you get your permanent assignment, there's no telling what you'll encounter. But pray to God, it's no more desperate than this. Now it is evening. As I lie in bed, I can hear the river rolling by the Mondombe mission. Richard comes over and sits beside me. You're listening to it again, he says. Huh? The river, the water. You get a particular look on your face when you're listening to it. I pull up the threadbare sheets and close my eyes. There is a high-pitched buzzing sound near me. Somehow, a mosquito has gotten past the gauzy netting that shrouds our bed. I sit up and thwack, smack the palm of my hand against the wall. The netting shudders. I look at the spot where I hit the wall, and there is a mangled mosquito. There is also, next to the bug, a tiny smear of red against the whitewash. Apparently, I struck a little too late. The light from my lantern flickers, and as I shake the tin base of the lamp, the flame goes out. I lie still, thinking about the millions of creatures God has put on this earth, each making its own way, scraping and struggling to survive. Then I wonder what an Oklahoma girl is doing in the middle of a big dark night on Congo River. I have come a great distance to find a patch of peace.